thought here. This is not a shocker to me. I think Anish just missed the move rook a1. I think he thought he's basically breaking through.
e7, e8, resign.
Yeah, but now the rooks will be forced to come off. And without the rook on e1, that pawn is not queening.
Oh, that's a complete turnaround.
Yeah, and that I think if MBL finds rook a1, and I think he will find rook a1 because he doesn't really have very much else.
Right.
He will be forced to play rook a1.
Yeah.
You just save it from here. And maybe Anish thought knight b1 is very strong, but now with the pin along the back rank, the engine even suggests you can play bishop b3, which is a shocker, but you can also just go with the king towards the e8 square or play bishop f6, because with that pin along the back rank,
right,
White's attacking prospects are severely diminished. So yeah, this is a huge turnaround from the position here after a5, bishop a5, rook a2, where if White just makes a very natural looking move d5, d6, stopping d7 is only really possible by giving up a second pawn.
And
yes, Black establishes some kind of a, well, you can't call it a blockade, but you've established some control over the things here. But you're still.
That's a way of saying you're not going to resign immediately. You don't have to resign immediately. Yeah. But yeah, it should be nursed to a victory. But the move e6, rook a1. Oh my gosh, that's the cold shower. Rook a1.
Huge and a bit uncharacteristic. I always feel that Anish is very good at finishing these kind of games off. A move like d6, and it's such a natural move. It's not even a very hard to find move. I mean, you've got two options, d6 and e6.
Right. And in this particular case, it happens that your bishop, just by circumstance, is covering the promotional square d8. So you're right, Peter. You play d6. You're forced to play b4. You go bishop takes b4. You go, yeah, yada, yada, yada. You get to play for a little while.
You know you eventually will win this position because you are two healthy pawns up, and you will need to blunder something very, very dramatic not to win it.
Rook a1. e6, big blunder, rook a1. That is...
And I think it's on the board.
Quite the turnaround. And for MVL, what a save.
What a save. But I've seen Maxime do these magical things on the board. It was at the Tata Steel Rapid where he's down a rook against with it, and he turns it around and wins the game. And that's not the only rook down game that I've seen Maxime turn around. And I think, Peter, you know the ones that I'm talking about. These are the kind of positions where he's so resourceful. But again, I felt like d6, it should not have been that, it should not have been a miss by Anish.
Sorry, we're getting so many exciting games, and I really thought that this one was going to be our marquee matchup, the game between Fabi and Alireza. And as you said, Peter, I mean, it's all about these attacks. I'm going to play b5, you're going to play f5, g5. I agreed with you, by the way. I like that move, queen e8. Just that Alireza took a different approach. He put his pawn on f6 first, this prep. And now he's getting ready. I was about to say he's getting ready for his kingside break. He went another way, g5. Jump in, Peter.
Yeah, he played slightly slower. He played a very similar approach, but slightly slower. He didn't play queen e8 here in this position. He played f6, rook f d1, queen f7. And I think the notable thing here to pay attention to is White sort of declared his intentions on the queen side here.
Sure.
You play b4, you play rook b1, you say, I'm going to do something on the queen side. And then Fabi spends the next 5 moves shuffling, mainly in the center and on the king side, allowing Black to basically achieve pretty much everything you want. And yes, now the pawn is on a5, but Black, really, with the amount of pieces next to the king, and very, very importantly, I think, with the queen on the 7th, meaning that you cannot really even entertain any thoughts of these sacrifices, because Black always has queen b7 in the end.
Yeah, nice.
So Fabi, after some thought, I assume, went for a fairly unhappy choice of giving up the remaining bishop and playing d3, d4. But the thing is, it's still not very clear what he's aiming for. The black queen side is extremely solid. It's very difficult to open anything up on the queen side. And black is one move away from
G4
asking very direct questions there.
He's on your doorstep with the move G5, G4.
And it's on the board. He did go for it, a very direct move. It's just so much easier to play with black. And I want to come down to the point that you made earlier, that this feels like more of an Alireza position, where it's dynamics and it's just easier to build the attack, while black's king on the queen side, extremely safe.
Agreed. Black is so solid there. And even if you spend a whole tempo playing a move like bishop c8 for whatever reasons you want to play bishop c8, your king is so safe.
And look at the clock, yes.
Yeah, let me...
2.5 minutes done for Fabi in a difficult position to defend. He's trying to open up the position on the queen side, but he just doesn't. Feels like he doesn't have enough resources to be able to do that. Alireza, a good 7 minutes, so he's got enough time to really find the right way here.
Interesting question, Tanya. Just throw that right back at you there. AB, and he's pausing because I think a lot of people play the move AB automatically recapturing, but would you have been attracted to undoubling your C pawns with a C7 takes B6?
And the reason you say a lot of people are attracted to the A pawn taking it, because you get a side pawn towards the center of the board, and you have this idea of moving the king one step ahead to B7, and if required, your rook from D8 can slide over to the A file and defend everything. I think both are extremely tempting option. I really liked Peter's approach of taking it with the C pawn so that your queen is not only an attacker on the king side, but also defends your king.
Yeah.
I have to say, if I had to make a split-second decision, I might have been more tempted to take it with the A pawn. What about you, Yasser?
Split-second decision, I'd probably have taken with the C pawn just because I like the defensive possibility. And again, black's king for me, Peter, is super safe. And that half-open G file about to be open.
I think one reason for taking with the C pawn is also like AB, you have opened the A file for white, right? So there are some thoughts perhaps of playing something like queen A2, rook A1, you're trying to play queen A6 and creating a mating attack. It's probably not going to be fast enough because things will be happening on the other side of the board, which is just happening much, much quicker than anything that we can describe here. But there's definitely a temptation to go C takes B. But I can understand it. And also, as we were discussing, it's so ingrained, I think, in chess players to capture towards the center that you have to have sort of life-changing reasons not to do it. And I think this is why he didn't even hesitate for too long.
What about you, Peter? Would you have captured it with the C pawn if you have to take an instinctive decision in this?
Honestly, probably not. No, I saw the engine preferring C takes B6, and I was kind of reluctant to even put it on the board because I want things compact. I want the proper approach to structural things is very, very deep in me, I think.
A more human approach to take with the A pawn, but it will be interesting to see if Fabi can create some dynamics with this open A line now, and that queen on F1. It's a retreating move, but watch out because it's aiming at the other side of the board.
Queen F1. Eyeballing A6.
While we're still here, there's a massive issue with this because black can even throw in bishop C4 here.
I'm not a big fan of this queen F1.
I think it's Fabi playing on 2 minutes. It's a very difficult position. He also doesn't really have much time to delve deeply and to try to find best play. And this just looks horrible because now you completely abandon any dreams of including your queen in the attack. Exactly. And black just starts doubling on the G5.
I wanted to ask Peter, come on, just double up.
Yeah, it looks horrible. It looks frankly borderline lost.
And also let's point out the basic but important tactic. If white was to recapture on F3 with the queen, Peter, that's also disaster because now the rook jumps onto G3 and you're suddenly skewered on the third rank, losing material.
Yeah, there goes a knight. Ouch. Okay, with so many things going on, we're just going to jump quickly to the Ray Robson game where we saw nothing was happening for the longest time, but somehow Ray has managed to sacrifice. Ray, by the way, is coming off a mixed year. He won the Czech Masters with some fabulous play. We had a nice little party here to celebrate his victory in St. Louis, but then a little bit disappointing in the U.S. Championship. What's going on, Peter?
Well, he is trying to, this is move 20, the very, very committal decision was taken in move 26, and they, at that point, were down to 6 minutes, and Ray is sort of correctly appreciating that he is running out of time to do something on the king side. If black is allowed to play rook a8, for instance, then f7, f6,
super solid.
everything will get traded down the one open file on the board, and the game will be drawn. So he goes f4 here, luring the queen in and gaining some tempi attacking it, which is honestly an interesting thing to do, and I think it hinges very much on this move queen h6, because other squares honestly look kind of dodgy to me. But the queen on h6, you can, for instance, continue by playing rook h3.
Okay.
And it starts looking iffy for black, right? You start wondering. Yeah, you start wondering just how safe that queen on h6 is. And let's say you make one natural-looking move here.
I wanted to suggest it.
And you allow rook f1, and suddenly knight f6 check is a threat, knight f4 is a threat. And if you play something like queen g5, you lose immediately to rook g3, and your g7 pawn is indefensible. So it's an interesting idea, and the fact that Engine holds this by starting by playing knight c8, I think specifically so that you can play queen g5, and after rook g3, you are no longer losing the g7 pawn because the knight is protecting it. But as you can see, the Engine doesn't hate it all that much. It just says that, yes, black can keep things under control by juggling his pieces very, very accurately. But if you have to start making moves like rook h6 here, and after, let's say, knight g4, I assume the rook has to go to h4.
It doesn't like you. You got to get that feel going.
This is not easy. Honestly, in practical terms, I very much like this decision of playing f4, because it changes the nature of the game very, very dramatically, and suddenly forces Geoffrey to solve concrete decisions instead of just sort of autopiloting.
Exactly.
Until that moment, I think his play was very easily understood, and he could pilot it quite comfortably.
And by the way, you had a knight
g4 played here.
Oh, nice
not
trick.
Rook h3.
Yeah, trying to land this very beautiful tactic, but this will not be blundered. And in fact, the Engine says after queen g5 now black is doing quite well, because
You shouldn't have played knight g4.
yeah, knight g4 is not the prescribed solution here, even though it still looks kind of scary after rook g3. Like, you have to be convinced you're not getting mated after something like knight h6 check or knight gf6 check here.
Yeah, you could get lost in a Alice in Wonderland here, because at first blush you're seeing all of these knight jumps, and you're kind of convincing yourself like, I've got something.
I would be very, very scared here with black.
Right.
And in particular, they will be playing this extremely complicated position on very, very low times. So,
Right.
This one is definitely the one to keep an eye on, because it could explode at any moment.
There are certain players, by the way, if you're playing against a Jeffrey Zhang and you play the move f2, f4, you're trying to get Jeffrey out of his comfort zone. If Jeffrey gets into that place where he's going to be unaffected, you're not going to beat him. So you want to make something double-edged and risky. And let's face it, Ray's a bit of a gambler. He's got that streak in him to go for this pawn sacrifice.
And very often in these time controls, gambles like these seem to work out even better.
In the rapid
In
blitz.
the rapid, because you don't have that much time to counter it. And the point that Peter was making, I think it's really important, that you just change the dynamics of the position. The position has been solid. There's an autopilot mode in which the players are playing, but suddenly it's about calculation. It's about being more concrete. And we see rook g3 was on the board with the big idea of the knight jumping. The queen moves out of the way to h4.
And now he's gone.
He's gone.
One mistake and he's gone. And I think it's findable as well, because yes, you don't really like trading attacking pieces, but it's a three-move calculation, which is really not that difficult. What he missed, I'm sure.
Is that a queen trap?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oof.
What he missed, I'm sure, is this move rook g4. And I think you miss it not because it's difficult, but because I think your brain refuses to start calculating from a trade.
Right.
You're worried about getting mated here. You're not worried about
trapping
your queen and things. So you start by calculating all of those knight h6, knight gf6 checks here, and you do need your rook on h6 to cover those squares. And you think, if my opponent has to start trading here, I'm okay.
Of course.
And you kind of ignore those variations. But yeah, rook e6, there is no choice. You have to take with the knight, knight h6 check. It doesn't really matter where the king goes, rook g4 next move. And you don't even get a rook and a knight for it. You just get you resign
pieces or something.
You
But the
resign.
crazy part, too, is with the queen on h4, Tanya, you have it in the back of your mind. You're thinking, hey, I've got E1 covered. When the rook was on E1, there was a pair of rooks on the board. So you really do close your mind, and you're only thinking about the safety of your king, not the safety of your queen.
I think this is how these mistakes happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's also adapting yourself psychologically from a very strategic Berlin fight going into this very concrete direct play, which isn't the easiest thing to do. And even though there were defenses, we saw an immediate collapse with Queen H4, and this is a big moment now. What I do know about Ray Robson is that he is a bit of a tactical genius. He finds these ideas. I've seen him when it comes to these attacking positions. He didn't, just as a commentator, Gus.
There you have it. You were about to say one of the great Puzzle Rush players.
Exactly.
And he's got records in Puzzle Rush. So if you had told him.
But look at the clock. I think that was a factor. He's down to about a minute, and finding this rook g4. I think rook g4, once you show it, Peter, you can't unsee it. But to see it from afar isn't that easy.
Wow. And now has a good turn completely in Jeffrey's favor?
No, it's a pretty balanced position actually.
Still,
because White still has a lot of activity on the king side. You still have to play very precisely, and the engine currently is suggesting you go queen e7, and you cannot really play rook f6 because it gets stuck there. But you can just give this exchange up to get rid of that very, very dangerous knight on e5, and this one is coming to e4 later. If you pick a side here, I guess you pick black, but it's still pretty balanced. But we're being told that Fabi is in a lot of trouble
he is.
in our game of the day, and it looks...
Ooh, there's a mate in one being threatened in that last position that we have.
We saw Tanya with queen f1, and we looked at takes. He did play bishop c4, by the way, did Alireza, and after doubling on the g file, well, here it comes. Rook takes f3. Bang.
Which was a threat in any case, and if we just do a quick action replay of the move king to h2 there, which was played against the idea of rook takes knight, but it happened anyway because the other rook jumps into the attack here, takes the knight, h3 is defended, but not anymore is. And queen f1, you don't even have the square for the queen to come into defense.
No, we already gave the queen the boot a few moves back. Is this... Yeah, this is minus 6.
The move that probably ends the game the fastest is the move rook h3, just creating this very, very strong idea of a 4 of 3.
By the way, I think
picks the queen.
We can see that the players just blitzed out their last few moves there, but it looks like the queen got hacked off the board.
Yeah, Alireza instead goes for a very, very understandable choice as well. Just goes rook f1 check, and then a 4 of 3 in the end there. Attacking the rook on h2. If you gave white one tempo to stop a 4 of 3, maybe you could have had a game. But yeah, this is going to be.
Results coming in.
By the way, we are just being told Wesley lost the game at a moment when we thought Wesley was getting a bit of the upper hand. We'll have to revisit that one, but we're going to stay with Fabi and Alireza for now because we've got 2 rooks versus the queen in this game, and
many reasons to stay on to this one. An exciting position, a great game by Alireza. And Alireza was your pick and Fabi was mine. You're doing well on that one.
Well, Tanya, you know, you're going to get a participation trophy. Don't worry.
Yeah, our board is somewhat behind the screen.
Yes.
But yeah, you can see on the screen, black has this extremely safe king, which is the one thing you have to pay attention to when you're playing this queen against 2 rooks positions. And black
by the
will
way,
also
did
have...
I want to tell you guys that you should play A takes B6 and have a very safe king position?
How many pawns is that?
Not enough.
Not enough. I mean, this is 4 pawns, but we're also getting an update that Anastasia, our commentator on the ground, he also picked Fabi to win this one, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a great start, Nastia, for you and I and Fabi.
Correct.
But how easy is this as a conversion? Queen versus 2 rooks?
It's pretty easy.
The
difference
is just
4 extra pawns.
Yeah.
The difference in king safety is just such that once you start pushing something, things just collapse. And Alireza, having done the needful things in the center and on the queen side, securing the king, making sure there are no checks, he is now just threatening to play h4, h3, and so on. And there's just no stopping it because.
Do you want to go b5, c4 as well?
Yes.
You
We
want
want
another-
everything.
You want
yes.
all of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's
there's
b5 and c4 check, inclusive with the.
Queen d1 check also picks up the last remaining
Oh,
pawn.
you definitely.
Oh.
He didn't see it, but it's not required. It's not really a miss.
Yeah, h3 is coming in
I
next.
don't know. Pawn grubbers.
Calling this a mistake is too
But
harsh.
you grab a pawn to push a pawn, and that's what Alireza is doing now. And the rooks are tied down to defend each other. You can't even get to the h file.
No.
And that's it. He wants to make a move, but Fabiano resigns. He knows there's nothing else to play for. Alireza takes a big win, yes.
By the way, I mean, we're seeing a lot of decisive games. And what happened between Anish and MVL? Because Anish was winning, and then it was
and then
drawing,
not anymore,
and then Rook A1 happened, Peter.
Yeah, I think the whole game was decided on that choice between e6 and d6. Had he played d6, I think he would have won. But as it happened, MVL escapes, giving us our first draw of the tournament.
One of the crazy games if you had told me when we started our show and we had gotten into the show that the draw was between Anish and MVL when we knew it was over, it's like, no, wait, what?
And Maxime, he's got to feel the relief
I
right
know.
now. It was a game that he got stuck in the start, but then managed to find the resources. There's one more game remaining. It is between Ray Robson and Jeffrey Zhang, a very tense position. And what's the clock situation? The player's down to under a minute.
It is extra in exchange here for Ray. But somehow when Jeffrey gave up his exchange, he didn't get the second pawn, Peter.
Yeah, if we just briefly return to the position we were discussing earlier,
Yes.
and then we'll just watch what happens, because that was a kind of important turning point. I was suggesting rook takes e5 needed to be played. It wasn't. So they're basically playing the version of the position we were discussing, but with white having
An extra pawn.
an extra pawn.
Okay, so let's just
25
catch up with the
seconds for
play.
white, and it's so many pieces on the board, and with the knights in the active position that they are, it's so easy to miss a knight jump in these kind of positions and walk into a fork. But as you said, it is an extra exchange, but I really like black's knights on the center of the board. It feels like it should be enough compensation.
Weirdly, it feels still like a 3-result game, even though white is clearly much, much better, and it shouldn't be. But it feels that with that knight on e4, which cannot be challenged by any of the white pawns, and as little time as they do have, it really does feel like it's possible to lose this with white. Maybe not with the queens off, though. And the queen trade has just been offered by Jeffrey.
And wow, 10 seconds for Ray Robson. He needs to take a decision. Do you keep the queens on the board trying to create some play, or do you go into an
3,
endgame?
2.
He decides to go for it.
Ray, for those of you who aren't familiar with Ray's play, try him as a teammate, because he gets into time trouble, and boy, he's used to going down. I have seen him make a move with a single second on his clock here in St. Louis on multiple occasions, actually. Remarkable. And the current position, how is it assessed? How do you assess it? How does the computer assess it, Peter?
White is still better, of course, due to the fact that he has more rooks, but
I'm not
I
getting
think
an
it's a
update
position
on
that
it,
you
by
can
the way.
definitely
There we go.
defend, because that knight on e4 is very, very strong. One thing I probably wouldn't play here is f6, f5, because I think that gives white the e5 square for the knight. I think giving white knight d3, knight d5 is unnecessary. It doesn't spoil very many things, but I would prefer to maybe not commit to it
And
just yet.
Peter, you
He
said
goes
what?
Commentator's curse
On the board.
cue.
But I was going to say that, you're talking about these extra rooks. When you got the extra rooks on the board, you want to open up lines. Does white have to start aiming for advancing and pushing some pawns on the queen side to try to get more activity, more lines for the rook?
Absolutely, yeah. You do need to open some files for the rooks, either with the c4 break or maybe even with the g4 break. Now that there is a pawn on f5 for us to try and
We
undermine. But as
did.
you see, black immediately stops this by playing h5, and Ray goes h4, which does away with any breaks on the king side, I guess. So if he wants to win this game now, he will have to open up the queen side at some point.
Well, again, having secured or locked down, if you will, both the center and the king side with this move h5, it comes back to what you're saying, Tanya. You're going to have to play for c3, c4, and to open up the lines for the rooks. Otherwise, your rooks are stuck.
Or defend the c pawn and go a4, b4, b5. It comes to this idea of trying to open up, get as many files for the rook as possible, otherwise you're just not playing for a win. The knights are jumping. Does he want to get the other knight to g4? Is this some kind of a maneuver where you defend the e5 square, the penetration with the white's knight, but you're also eyeing that g4 square for your own knight?
I love the knight on g4. I think the knight on g4 is not only, as you said, defending e5, but it's intrusive. The white king just kind of feels like, oh, wait a minute.
It's heading there, yes. It's coming.
Yeah. By the way, Jeffrey is one of those players. He has a way of moving that lulls you to sleep. It feels like he's not doing anything, and his hands kind of make this languishing kind of moves. And then suddenly you realize you've got no time on your clock. And
look at those 3 knights on the 4th rank. It's
Impressive.
quite a picture that Jeffrey has created with his hand movement, as you're pointing out.
Exactly.
And yes, white has the extra exchange, but I'm starting to like black's position. The extra minutes on the clock.
The last move, rook h7, was a signal that maybe Jeffrey was ready to play g5 and maybe h4. And Ray said, I'm not going to give you that. He went rook h1, a kind of a defensive move, but it's still about the queen side. And can he play c3, c4 one day?
He's got to do that. He has to find a way to advance the pawns on the queen side, create some lines for the rook. But this is prediction time. Does this end in a decisive result, or are we going to have a draw here?
Just a draw. Sorry, Tanya. But yeah, I do feel that both players are going to play safely, accurately, and I don't see Ray as, he pushed his luck with f4, and he was almost rewarded a success, but no, I think he's kind of happy with the outcome. It was a good fight.
And it's a good thing that right now he's not aware of the fact that he missed trapping his opponent's queen.
Yes.
Which would have, of course, been a completely different game. Really nice idea pointed out by Peter with the rook to g4, some moves back, but this is a completely different position now. And the last few moves, it feels like black has made all the progress, while white still hasn't managed to find the squares for the rooks.
And again, if our understanding is correct that we're going to be playing for c4 one day and breaking on the queen side, well, no progress has been made in that direction. By the way, Peter, is that something that has plagued you in your career? It certainly has plagued me. I've made a move only to become aware of the fact after I've made the move that I've missed a golden opportunity, and I kicked myself for missing it.
You're much better off never realizing it until the game is finished. Yeah,
Right.
and those are the lucky ones where you make a mistake, and then people will tell you after the game, and you will feel completely rotten. But
Yes.
it's much, much better than actually figuring it out for yourself and still having to continue the game, because you do want to. The self-loathing was strong with him that day, as the quote goes. Yeah,
Right.
And, that is a feeling I'm very, very well acquainted with. Black could go for the g5 break right now, I guess, but I think it's probably playing to lose more than playing to win. I don't know if Jeffrey feels that he is sort of confident to start taking risks against 13 seconds on Ray's clock here.
Tanya, I've got to ask you the same question. Are you affected? Does it impact your mindset when you make a move, and then you're very happy with the move you made, and suddenly this awareness comes over that you missed a winning moment?
100%. I think every chess player has been through that, and I completely agree that it's better to not know.
No.
If you don't have any idea during the game, you can keep your mind, be present in the moment, but it's so hard to let go of what has just happened or what you've just missed. And in a format like this where you've got another game coming up, it's probably even better to not know after the game.
Right.
So that you don't think about it. The moves that we're seeing been played over the last couple of moves, there are no breaks possible anymore on the
I was about to say,
the queen side.
Once Jeffrey played the move a4, which was met, by the way, by the move a3, which means that you're not playing b3, you're not going to get c4. There's no way this exchange is going to be impactful, and I think black has secured equality now.
To me, Yasser, the move a3 feels like a silent draw offer. He's saying, I'm on the defense now. I don't have...
I kind of feel that, yeah, I get that. And by the way, I love what Jeffrey has done. He's played rook a8, rook a5, and he's going to play rook b5. And by the way, that's a tender pawn on b2.
It's a soft pawn.
Yeah, which requires this ugly defense. And at what point, Peter, do you start saying, well, if you're going to give me the advantage, I'm going to play?
Honestly, once a sequence where Black played a4 and that was met by a3 happened, I think only Black really can play for a win anymore, because White is completely stuck there. There will never be anything that you can do really to improve your position unless Black does something dramatically stupid. And for Black, you can play rook b3 and then try to open something up on the queen side. You can maybe try preparing the c5 break, although that is very double-edged. If you do play c5 and it doesn't come off for you immediately, that might actually signal
bad.
Yeah, signal once again that White has some winning chances. But generally, I think Jeffrey will feel like he's definitely the side playing for a win here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, knight takes e4 is a move I would embrace as Black. d5 takes e4, and I'm going to reroute my knight to the d5 square. That's why we saw knight f3 by Ray. And okay.
Are we going to see a repetition at this point? Because it also feels like Black has done maximum out of the position that you can hope for. Your knights are beautifully placed in the center. The rook is on the b file, but what's next? The only break that comes to mind is the one that you pointed out with c5, but that's a double-edged sword, and you create open lines and a d5 weakness in that case.
By the way, knight e1, I kind of like what Ray did. Somehow this rook came all the way back, and the knight on d3 is well placed. It kind of releases our rook for
to do
a better
what exactly?
task.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, well, you got me on that one. But the fact that the rook, which was maximized on b3, has gone all the way back to a8 is an indication that a draw is getting increasingly more likely, Peter.
Yeah. On the other hand, it feels like Black is really risking nothing at all, and the 40-second, it's now down to 20, but there was at some point maybe even a 50-second difference on the clock, will perhaps work as a bit of an incentive for Jeffrey to continue, even though you're probably continuing by just shuffling and not really committing to anything. The only thing to commit to would be something like b6, c5, but I don't know if that does anything at all.
Yeah.
And with this rook moving from one side of the board to the other, Jeffrey's always threatening this move g5.
Yes.
But it has to be timed correctly.
Because you're doing White a solid favor of opening up the H file potentially. And I think the move rook g8 and a8 is a silent draw for with the move knight e1. But of course, Ray says, I'll play on. Knight c5, wait a minute.
b5 played, so he defends the b pawn by moving it forward, also defending the a pawn.
Rook
but now there really aren't any
Rook
breaks
A8.
left.
Knight c5 and b5, and then White goes back with the knight, and the whole point is that Black doesn't have any breaks as well on the queen side anymore.
Right. I was about to say, the move knight c5 did offer the potential for a knight trade there. Knight takes c5 and rook to a5. I'm a pawn grubber. I at least thought about the question.
100%, but then you give this open E line for the White's rook to come into play, and you can grab a pawn, but what White really wants is rook activity. That knight on e4 is so much worth more than a pawn. Oh, I forget who I'm with right now. Need to watch my words.
It is worth so much more than a pawn. Boy, I don't know. That's...
Maybe I should say it depends which pawn really we're talking about.
Right, okay.
I'm gonna rephrase myself here.
Give me a little solace there. Okay, Peter, I'm just seeing the players kind of shuffling. They've kind of checked each other's resumes out here pretty solidly.
It feels like any break here would be severely detrimental to the side making the break, apart from maybe g5. But now that the pawn on c6 is somewhat vulnerable, I think it's much harder for Black to abandon the c8 square for the rook. Yeah, it feels like we are now perhaps repeating.
Exactly. So far, Tanya, the times have not been too much of a factor. I think Ray got under 10 seconds at one particular moment, but they're keeping a brisk pace, I'd say. Yeah?
Yes. And I really feel that draw would be sort of a fair outcome of this endgame play that we've been seeing by these players. It's just difficult to imagine a break, and as we mentioned earlier, Jeffrey's just maximized everything in the position. The only thing that white shouldn't do is trade on e4.
Right.
As you pointed out, then black just takes with a d pawn and vacates that square for the knight to jump into.
Exactly. So these rooks are
Yeah,
prime
it felt
position
like
for...
a moment ago there was an actual repetition on offer with
Right.
the knight before. Perhaps Ray could have even claimed
Right.
a threefold, and he goes knight c5 instead, preserving the illusion that something might still happen in this game, but I'm not sure I believe that.
The more they play, the more I feel we're going to see g5 on the board at some point.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a time for G5, I would have said
5 seconds. He needs to make a move.
3
Oof.
and rook h1 again.
Panicky.
A
Yeah.
little panicky, and honestly, it's sort of very inviting now against 12 seconds, because there might be some uncomfortable decisions to be made.
You start encouraging your if you're going to encourage your opponent too much and allow them to play G5, well,
Doesn't do it.
I think it wasn't working for a very precise, specific reason, and I think
do tell.
Jeffrey did. I think if he played G5, takes knight d7 check was very annoying.
That was the one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then if the king goes to e6, you have rook takes e4, and that position might end up being not that great for black.
Gotcha. That was just on my analysis board, everybody. I'm going to refresh my board and come back to the live position.
And it feels like that could be a bit of a repetition with rook h1 now. He
I've
comes
seen
back.
it a few times, yeah.
What are the players even playing for right now? It's so hard to tell because they're not repeating the moves. They are shuffling around.
Oh, this is an interesting point, by the way. Knight d2 check has been played, as we can see on the screen, not on the live board.
Right.
And if the king goes forward, g5 check might be very strong. And if king g2, even here, I thought g5 may have been playable, but
King G2,
he
G5.
shirks from it, and goes back to c4.
And again, that sudden attack on the G3 pawn does look inviting. But I think you said it very well, Peter, that the player who it's a blockade. The player who lifts the blockade, who makes the break.
Yeah, it's the one in the receiving end.
Yeah, he ends up getting injured by making the break. So they're just keeping the status quo here with knight f4 and king f3. Oh, rook h3.
Oof, that's not
That
a
is
square.
not a square I would have guessed. It's
Rook h3.
Yeah, what is it doing there? I don't really know.
That.
Maybe that's the ultimate troll, that I can put my rook on h3 and you still can't do anything.
You start to think about knight b2 and knight takes c3 because it's sort of like.
Oh, so he wants the king on. He wanted the king on c1 maybe, so he protected the g3 pawn with the rook,
In order
he wanted to start running with the king towards c1, c2, but I
But
think
then king
that,
e1, knight f3 is there.
Yeah.
it didn't quite work out for him. Yeah, another seemingly draw for is on the board now.
Once again.
Yeah, and rook h3 is,
Comes back.
I think, the ultimate mysterious rook move. It's very
Rook
much in
H3.
contention for one of the more mysterious rook moves in chess history.
Right. And again, it always tickles my funny bone whenever I think about this. I make a move like rook h3, and I explain to Bent Larson that the idea was to be able to play king to f1 to e1 to c1. I'm making this compelling argument. He looks at me and he says, "Yeah, sir." Nobody believes you. Just immediately shuts me down.
Yeah.
Nobody believes you.
I'm also not believing in black's chances currently. It looks really nice, and is that a repetition?
He might win on time, though, because
Yeah, he's playing
Ray keeps on leaving himself like 2 seconds.
Habitually. By the way, a big shout out to both Lajos Portish and Bent Larson. Bent no longer with us, but Lajos still happily kicking in Budapest as those two great legends join in the World Chess Hall of Fame, being inducted last night. Very nice occasion, along with Susan Polgar, our bell ringer of the round.
Absolutely, and we're seeing the shuffle around to continue, and this might just be the end of it now.
Well, I think the players actually have to say, with my move,
Oh, he's
8, I am.
he's claiming
I
a draw.
He's claiming. And it's a kind of a risky claim because I don't think you can actually keep track here.
How many times or not?
But it kind of gives them the chance to maybe take a breather.
You get your opponent a minute. Big deal. I mean, that's the penalty if your claim is disallowed.
The amount of times we've seen this position feels like a reasonable guess. It's got a good shot, and that's it.
Whoa.
Handshakes, he got it right.
You got it right.
Very impressed, honestly, because I don't think I would have been able to confidently state that I've seen this 3 times before.
Me either. Not with confidence, but that does sum up 2 draws, 3 decisive games, and a couple of these decisive games I did not expect. Could you show me where Wesley and Liam? We didn't get a chance to see that. What happened?
Yeah, that went downhill very, very quickly for Wesley. We left it not here exactly.
We
but
just saw
close
the move
to
A5.
Here.
We saw the move A5, and we thought, okay, Wesley is getting something.
Yeah, and he played before and then took with the bishop, which I think is logical. I don't think he absolutely needed already to commit to before, but it's a logical decision. 95. Somewhere here I thought this is a very balanced position and black should maybe even be slightly better with the knight coming to d6, but takes, 92, and I assume something is wrong with the move knight d6, which I think I would have made without thinking even.
Right.
It's not suggested by the engine either, and Wesley played queen b6. The knight came back to f3, which is arguably maybe a draw offer. And then he did play 96 next move, 96, 94. And I think maybe he went for a little bit too much. I think if the knights come off here, it should be very, very close to equality. But instead, he played queen g6, allowed knight c5, knight d7.
I'm beginning to feel a little bit...
Whoops.
Good job.
How did I get here? And how do I
hit your menu? There you go. Bravo.
Hang on.
Yeah.
We will get to where we need to get to eventually.
It's day 1. We're working out all the kinks.
Yeah. and then somehow the d pawn just ran from here.
And
but here are our standings.
Yes. What a round 1. We've had 3 decisive games, 2 draws, and this is where we stand. Alireza with a fantastic win over Fabiano Caruano. He did it with the black pieces.
Yes, he did.
With 2 points for a win, along with Liam and Sam Savian. We had 2 draws, which put Maxime, Anish, Jeffrey, and Ray Robson with 1 point. And at the bottom of the board, after round 1, the first round lost Fabi, Jan, and Wesley. Wow, 3 big heavy hitters there.
At the bottom of the table goes to show you how strong is our event. As we get ready for a break, we check in with our friends at Q Boutique and see what